Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba of LumumbaSpeaks.com. Back once again with a great show. Want to first and foremost get a happy Pan African Monday, right? Mr. Sandman to kill me if I don't say the happy Pan African Monday. Shout out to, of course, the Illidale for boosting his handling this BI this weekend against, of course, Xander Zayas. Shout out to, of course, Puerto Rico for Xander Zayas showing tremendous heart, acumen, and I would even argue championship medal. Because even though he lost the fight and he was really blown out in the fight, he never was rattled. So definitely want to give a shout out there. Shout out to Mr. K for actually sending me the video regarding this issue and that we're going to do a deep dive on. So today's show, if you're watching, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and donate. Of course, you could donate at, of course, Cash App, Lumumba Speaks, and of course, via the Super Chat and Venmo at Bakari Lumumba, B Lumumba. So today's show, what Megyn Kelly and FBAs get wrong about Haitian temporary protected status. That says TBS, it should be TPS. Please forgive me, family. um, yeah, it should be TPS rather than TBS. We're not watching television. Um, so we're going to really get into this. So, this is LumumbaSpeaks.com, a black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on black, in conjunction, of course, with Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African centered news and information. Once again, if you're watching, make sure you subscribe, support, share, and donate. We're going to be discussing what Megyn Kelly and FBA's get wrong about Haitian temporary protected status. Many of you may be aware that Roland Martin, of course, provided a vociferous critique of Megyn Kelly's um, protestations, so right, on her platform. As many of you may be aware, Megyn Kelly is an attorney, former, of course, media a commentator for, of course, Fox News. And then, of course, she went to NBC. That show, I believe, is canceled. Don't quote me on that. But there was even some issues when she was on NBC where she was engaging in some, of course, the white nationalist and bigoted rhetoric on the platform. And, of course, that had individuals came on to, of course, debate her. And then, of course, now she's an independent media where she has her own podcast. So we're really going to get into this. One of the issues I think is important when we talk about Haiti, the first Black Republic, is there's a lot of misinformation out there, right? And we know in America, most Americans are ignorant of world history or even, global or regional politics. But we also tend to find that many of our people, not only particularly Black people here in the West, tend to lean into these racialized stereotypes that really are derivatives, of course, of the Ma'afa, the African Holocaust, of colonialism, imperialism, racism, and slavery, that adverb that African people simply struggle with self-government. We're going to do a deeper dive into, of course, why that is nonsensical, why that is inaccurate. And if you're watching on Twitter, make sure you follow Dwayne Mawala. I just saw that he posted a tweet, of course, disabusing, providing a retort that disabuses Megyn Kelly's argument that the Haitian people simply lack work ethic, when the reality situation is there's been, of course, foreign meddling, particularly led by the United States, that's contributed to, of course, the disruptions in, of course, civil society in Haiti. And of course, if we have time, we will get into that. But once again, family, if you're watching, of course, make sure you subscribe, like, share, and donate. You're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African centered news and information. So, real quick, family, when I'm playing the video, I'm going to play it at 1.5 speed. One, because we want to speed it up. Two, we don't want to get of course, copyright blocked. And three, it allows us to really get through the information quickly, that I can provide my commentary. Once again, the link is in the description, but of course, the link will be in the chat momentarily. Greetings, Kevin, aka Mr. K. So shout out to Mr. K, because he's the one who put me onto this morning. I woke up this morning, and the first thing I saw, of course, was an email from Mr. K telling me, hey, man, you got to pull up. You got to pull up. You know what I'm saying? We got to spin the block real quick in these YouTube streets. But definitely want to give a shout out to Mr. K. I really would hope that at least one day, even today, will be that day that you will be emboldened enough to come on the platform. Of course, you don't have to, cam up, really give your perspectives, because in a lot of issues that we discuss, your far more knowledgeable than me, right? And we need more historians to take part in this conversation so we can disseminate factual information, of course, to the masses of African people. So I hope that today is that day. As you know, you do not have the camera up, and of course, you know, you do not have to use your actual name. You can use a pseudonym, which I presume you already do. And I definitely hope that today can be that day, because it's a very important conversation we're going to have about, of course, our Haitian brothers and sisters who have not received the support of the Supreme Court, as they've sided, of course, with President Donald J. Trump. So I'm going to share my screen, family, and we're going to get this conversation started. And so what this will be is an actual response to a video where Megyn Kelly is going in, and this is a real Diana. She's identified as an FBA Black woman. And so we know what that entails, right? And so we're going to really do a deeper dive, look at this, and really rebuff a lot of the misinformation that, of course, she is disseminating on her platform as well. As I said it before, we tend to find, unfortunately, we really find this throughout the African world, that many of our views as African people, not just in terms of history of African people, but just the world, really comes from a white nationalist or white supremacist lens. We know this is due to the omnipresent role of miseducation. As I said it before in my doctoral dissertation, in the book, I can't even think of the book right now, The Racial Contract by Charles Mills, he talks about the omnipresent role of miseducation of African people. And he gives examples on the continent. And he cites, of course, the brilliant work of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who was a Kenyan-born educator, political scientist, activist. He actually transitioned to the realm of the ancestors last May here in the good old US of A, pun intended, in what is Georgia. He talks about, of course, the miseducation that took place in the Caribbean, colonial Caribbean, and of course, even the United States, citing the brilliant work of Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So we know that this is a global issue that African people face. So, but if you watch your family, make sure this get those thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Let's see here very quickly. Before you start, I have a question to ask. Have you got the book Fear of Black Republic by Leslie Alexander? Yes, I actually do have that book, and I actually started it. I started the book, but unfortunately, it's in storage right now. But I do have the book Fear of Black Republic. So, matter of fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that book up, Fear of Black Republic. So many of you, of course, if you have not read the book, if you're unaware of the book, you definitely need to check it out. But I'm going to share it on my screen. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Then I'm going to actually share the book so you all can check it out. Because I actually read the introduction and then I had to move from Cali. And so it's in storage right now. But yes, this is the book. Definitely check this out, Fear of the Black Republic. This really goes into the historical issues regarding why Haiti is the poorest and most undeveloped nation in the Western Hemisphere. As many of you may be aware, at the time of the Haitian Revolution, Haiti was known as the Pearl of the Caribbean. It was the wealthiest nation in the Western world, and it was wealthier than, of course, the colonial United States. Part of this took place as a result of gunboat diplomacy and, of course, just global white hegemony, where European nations and Western nations refused, or we could say Western nations refused to not only recognize Haitian sovereignty, but also refused to buy or trade with Haiti as well. So that played a role. So just something to consider. But I appreciate you once again, Mr. K, for bringing that book up, because if anyone is interested in really doing a deeper dive and understanding what's going on, that would be where to start. So, but we're going to get started without further delay. All right.
Megyn Kelly goes off on the Haitians and the Syrians losing their temporary protected status. And honey, Roland Martin fell out over her remarks. So let's get into it.
And look, this has been going on for over a dozen years. Go home. Get out. We know our country's better than yours. That's because we filled it with our work ethic and our culture and our values. You being here only dilutes it for us, those who built it and live it. And half of you people, more than half, you won't assimilate. We don't want you. We don't care if you're offended. Get out. Go home. Go back to fucking Haiti. Sorry. I'm thinking about our friends in Ohio who've been dealing with these TPS Haitians for years now, who are drunk driving all over their towns and killing people. This is the whole cats and dogs thing. Like, they don't want to live like Americans live. And
so a couple of things. One, first and foremost, you can see the white nationalism coming out, right? This concept of, the reason why we're successful is because we have this great work ethic. It's not because we have gone around the world and systematically denied people rights, systematically exploited individuals, political disenfranchisement, military, aggression, etc. The second issue she talks about is we don't want you here, right? And so this is really referring to this concept that is very common, of course, in white nationalists and white hegemonist circles of what wanted America to be an ethno state, right? They take extreme umbrage with the blacking, browning, or coloring of America, and that so we see that whenever there's been real or perceived racial progress or minoritized progress for racial minorities in America, it's followed by what typically legislative retrenchment, right? This is an example of that. But also she's promoting these false narratives, right? The situation where the individual unfortunately caused the deletion of a school child on the bus wasn't because he was drunk driving. He simply didn't have a driver's license, right? And that caused the accident because he was not a licensed driver who actually went through the testing and knew how to properly drive. The second issue, the issue of cats and dogs. Of course, we did a show on that. I wrote some articles on that on Medium. If you haven't followed me on Medium, make sure you do so. I'll put the link in the chat. This was known as white projection, right? All of the cases in Ohio, and I'm from Ohio, I live in Ohio, I was born and raised in Ohio. Shout out to the Gem City, Dayton, Ohio, which Springfield, some people argue, is a suburb of Dayton. It's about 25 miles northeast of the city center of Dayton, downtown Dayton. All of the cases of individuals in the state of Ohio for the past 20 years who were charged and convicted of eating at pets were white. In fact, the day that the accusation was made, or at least leaked to the media or made in the media, an individual in the city of Springfield, a white man, was what? Found guilty of engaging in the very behavior that they were accusing Haitian immigrants of engaging in. So this is all about promoting the concept of Haitian people or African people, period. African descendant people being untoward, uncivilized, barbaric, and unable to live in what contemporary civil society. These things aren't true, but of course she's leaning into these racialized stereotypes, anti-Black stereotypes from the onset of her soliloquy.
This was supposed to be it was supposed to be temporary help, and it's turned into another backdoor way of allowing someone permanent residency here, and they take advantage of all of our public services.
Megyn Kelly argues that temporary protected status was never meant to be permanent, yet it has functioned as a de facto pathway to long-term residency, allowing migrants to access public services, housing, and benefits indefinitely with no exit. Now, to the assimilation critique, she claims that a significant portion of Haitian TPS holders are not integrated into American culture, pointing to incidents in Ohio, such as the drunk driving, and of course the cats and dogs controversy story.
Now, here's the issue. One, if you had an issue, you could argue drunk driving is an American phenomenon. The overwhelming majority of people who engage in drunk driving are, of course, white. The data supports this, right? The second issue is if you have an issue with immigrants, then you should take umbrage with Trump, of course, allowing white South Africans to come here. But this is all code for what racism, white supremacy, right? That's all it is. But of course, you see this FBA woman is co-signing her bigotry, which is something that we find is very common. We've talked about this ad nauseum, that of course this typically is a form of what? Militant integrationism.
As evidence that the arrangement is failing communities on both sides. Now, SCOTUS validates the argument. With the Supreme Court overturning TPS protections, Kelly's rant lands at a political charge moment, framing the ruling as a long overdue correction and a vindication of those who've been raising alarms about TPS abuse for over a decade. Now, guys, let me share something with you real quick. Here's the thing. Medicare is predatory, not the coverage itself, but the...
So here's the thing. Well, let's break down what TPS actually is. Temporary protected status was created, if I remember correctly, during the first Bush administration, the older Bush, not the younger Bush, if I remember correctly. If I'm not speaking factually, you can, of course, fact check me. Part of what took place, this was for individuals who were fleeing the countries or leaving the countries due to what? Natural disasters or political turmoil or unrest. One of the issues that we find, particularly in terms of Haiti, is much of the civil and political instability in Haiti has been fomented by the United States. Literally, this is not conjecture, this isn't hyperbole, this isn't me seeking to remove the responsibility of Haitians for building, developing a civil society and placing it on the backs of others, non-Haitian others. This is an actual reality. Began, of course, post-independence. But let's fast forward to the 20th century, right? We could talk about, of course, U.S. occupation of Haiti, right? And this was rooted in the Monroe Doctrine, right, which was American imperialism, in which they restructured the Haitian economy from being self-sufficient to dependent, of course, on American imports. Great example of that, and of course, many people say, well, you're providing generalizations, so let me provide some specifics. Haiti's agricultural economy was self-sufficient, right? Particularly in terms of poultry, was rooted around the Black Haitian pig, right? If you ever go to Boys Cayman, right, they still had a picture at the site where they had the of course, voodoo ceremony that was the precursor to the Haitian Revolution. Of course, it was a black pig that they slaughtered. When the Marines came in, slaughtered the black pigs, and then forced the Haitian government to what? Import white American pigs, right? Same thing with multinational corporations. We're going to set up really sweatshops. And of course, Haiti, have people work for pennies on the dollar during the Marine occupation. They even engaged in forced labor camps, right? So we're talking about enslavement. So these are some issues. We move forward. Of course, they supported Papa Doc and Baby Doc, who were of course, unfortunately, man, for lack of better words, just horrible executive administrators of the country. Of course, they were totalitarian, authoritarian, of course, heads of state. And then, of course, when we had Aristide, who was, of course, elected in the early 90s, because he wasn't pro-America and capitalism and imperialism. Of course, the CIA paid, of course, I believe I remember correctly, the general in the Haitian army to start a coup to remove him, right? So there's a lot that's been going on. And then even after that, they created the SIN, which is an acronym for an actual intelligence organization that was funded by the CIA that engaged in drug trafficking and political killings and terrorist attacks against Haitian citizens. So all these things would appear these people can't govern themselves, when the reality situation is Western imperialism has played a hand in fomenting these type of civil unrest, right? So the problems that Haiti has is due to a lack of respect for the country's sovereignty. Something to consider, right? So just say Mr. K says, like Leslie Alexander states, Americans are not taught about the U.S. occupation of Haiti. Yeah, Americans typically aren't taught about anything, right? So it's something to consider. I think there's just a gap in those who see a problem and make the decision to have a simple solution. So Jabril X is real. Hopefully you can tap in and be part of the convo. I definitely want to get a deeper understanding of what you mean by that. But we're going to move forward, okay? In the video.
You have, and if you want to understand how MAGA thinks, you want to understand why they're thinking this way, all you have to do.
So this is, of course, Roland Martin's response or retort to Megyn Kelly's podcast.
Violent racist Megyn Kelly, who showed her ass when she said this.
For over a dozen years. Go home. Get out. We know our country's better than yours. That's because we filled it with our work ethic and our culture and our values. You being here only dilutes it for us, those who built it and live it. And to live like Americans live. And this was supposed to be a temporary...
Megyn Kelly's a fucking idiot. And the reason she's a fucking idiot is because she just sat there and repeated the bullshit lie about cats and dogs. That was a story made up by a white woman who actually had her dog returned. It's a bullshit lie. But not only that, it also shows you how this airhead, so-called lawyer, hasn't even read shit. Okay? She went on and on and on, Nicole, about, our culture. Heifer, let me explain something to you. The largest land purchase in the United States was a Louisiana Purchase, which was a result of slave revolt in Haiti in 1804. You talk about culture? You don't have fucking culture, Megyn Kelly, without Haitians. What the hell do you think New Orleans is? We can go on and on and on, and really...
This, of course, is very true. Very true. Of course, the Haitian Revolution caused the French government, the Polish French government, to sell the Louisiana Purchase to the United States because, of course, the revolution, which lasted 13 years, was bankrupting the French economy and French government. So he's absolutely right there.
Break down the culture that Haitians have provided to the United States. Her no dancing ass needs to understand that as well. But then she cited, oh my God, the people in Springfield, they've been dealing with these people and they've been drunk driving. Really? Do y'all recall 60 Minutes when they went to Springfield, Ohio, and they talked to a white man, CEO of a company, and this is what he said about those Haitians.
It started slowly. We had an application pool that was a little bit different. People coming to work here. People looking for jobs. What he's welding here again are welded axle components.
Jamie McGregor is the CEO of McGregor Metal, which makes welded parts for the auto and farm industries. Right now, about 10% of his workforce is Haitian, over 30 employees.
I wish I had 30 more. Our Haitian associates come to work every day. They don't have a drug problem. They'll stay at their machine. They'll achieve their numbers. They're here to work. And so in general, that's a stark difference from what we're used to in our community.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe y'all didn't catch what he said. What he was really saying is, these white people here, they don't come to work on time. They don't work hard. He said, we're not used to that. Roll it again.
Absolutely. And so many of you may be aware, about 2 years ago, I went to
It started slowly. We had an application
I
pool.
went to the Haitian Community Center in Springfield. I'm going to drop by there again today. But once again, they said, hey, they show up to work on time. They don't have drug problems, right? They work double shifts. One of the brothers, he said, listen, I'm working in the factory, and back home I was a lawyer, right? So these are some of the issues that, of course, aren't being promoted by, of course, the MAGA right. But we know why that is the case.
It was a little bit different. People coming to work here. People looking for jobs. What he's welding here again are welded axle components.
Jamie McGregor is the CEO of McGregor Metal, which makes welded parts for the auto and farm industries. Right now, about 10% of his workforce is Haitian, over 30 employees.
I wish I had 30 more. Our Haitian associates come to work every day. They don't have a drug problem. They'll stay at their machine. They'll achieve their numbers. They're here to work. And so in general, that's a stark difference from what we're used to in our community.
That's a stark difference than what we're used to in our community, Nicole. He's saying these white folk don't work as hard as the Haitians.
You know, first of all, for this white woman to say that her and her people are the ones that built this country is laughable, because we know that the United States was built on the backs of Black people, immigrants, people of color, everybody but white people. We did the hard labor to get us where we are today. And the foundation of America was built on immigrants. That's why we have the Statue of Liberty in New York. So now for her to sit here and say that we want them to leave, that we don't want them here, that is absolutely not true. And America is going to see what will happen if we start really trying to get rid of all of our protected immigrants. This country will really go downward, especially economically. We need everybody to thrive. And one thing that we know is that capitalism needs people at the underclass to point and hate each other for it to thrive. Now they want us to blame Syrians and Haitians for job loss and all these crazy things. But really what we need to be doing is coming together and fighting against the people at the top that want us to be fighting against each other. We need our Haitians, we need our Syrians, we need all of our immigrants here in this country.
See, this is why 8 out of 10 times I never side with Roland Martin or his panel, because they always come up here talking this fake mythical narrative, creating a mythical narrative as if immigrants of any background actually helped build America. And I'm so sick of it. So let me just state some facts here. That woman on that panel highlighting the Statue of Liberty. Here's the truth about the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was originally created as a gift from the people of France to the United States to commemorate the centennial of American independence, celebrate the shared ideas of Republican government and liberty between two nations, and honor the recent abolition of slavery in the United States. So the foundation of America, even the French knew it has to do with foundational Black Americans.
So here's the thing, and this is where, of course, the sister is going to. I had them on my channel probably about 2 years ago when I went to the event Ohio Haitians Talk Back. But I might do some content when I go up there today. So here's the issue. To make the claim that the French government cared about African Americans in America is nonsensical when they were oppressing Black people in Haiti and throughout Francophone Africa, right? It's just absolute nonsense, right? But this is, once again, individuals misrepresenting history, right? Some people would argue, well, give a good example, Sugar Ray Robinson, considered Mr. Pound for Pound. They created the Pound for Pound list because of the greatness of Sugar Ray Robinson. Of course, initially he went to France. He had a group with him. That's where the term entourage came from. So I don't know who Dana Judge is. But please let me know what point are you trying to make by asking that question. He went with his pink Cadillac, right? He was hailed as, oh, you're this great, Black American, African American fighter. The second time he went to France, he started asking questions about French imperialism in Africa. They told him, get your Black ass out of here, right? So something to consider. But once again, this is a way of trying to, once again, gain proximity to whiteness, in my opinion, from the FBA community. So let's keep going, family.
This has nothing to do with immigrants. It had nothing to do with Ellis Island. So that Statue of Liberty represents freedom. Freedom of the United States breaking away from Britain, and freedom of the foundational Black Americans, abolition up from slavery. See, this Black and brown and Black immigrant coalitions are a myth. After 1804 Haitian Revolution, they, the Haitians, gave their country back to France by agreeing to pay them over $100 million for their loss, France loss.
So, all right, let it keep going, and then we have a
of economic power that was created by the enslavement of the Haitians in the first place, which is the reason why they had to revolt. So the Haitians, kicking out the French, agreeing to then pay them for their economic loss, they agreed to essentially re-enslave themselves to the country of France. Now you make that shit make sense.
So once again, this is a misrepresentation of history, right? The reality of the situation is after the revolution, France threatened. As a matter of fact, this actually took place. This was gunboat diplomacy. They actually sailed um, warships to Haiti, surrounded the country, and said, "You agree to these terms, or we're going to fight again." Right. So this was gunboat diplomacy. As you can imagine, Haiti, after 13 years of war, uh, was not in a position of power. Right. And not in a position of power to actually do that. And I think that was the place. I do believe. I forget who was the president at the time. I don't want to mispronounce his name. That agreed to that. But to make the simplistic claim that, oh, they just gave the country back to France is not what transpired. Right. The same thing happens, of course, on the continent of Africa. Nations gain nominal or flag independence. Right. But at the same time, they were really recolonized or neo-colonized through what? Structural adjustment and loans. So yes, she is extremely misrepresenting history. I agree with Mr. K. Sounds like she got her knowledge of Haiti history solely from watching Tariq's 1804 film. This is extremely problematic, yes. And so this also leads to this belief that somehow we're superior to our brothers and sisters, of course, in the Caribbean or on the continent. Another issue that I think is pertinent to this conversation is that throughout the early history of Haiti, Haiti not only fought against the transatlantic slave trade, we're talking about Henry Christophe's Kingdom of Northern Haiti, where they actually went out on the high seas, captured slaving vessels, and then, of course, freed the Africans who were, of course, enslaved and brought them to Haiti, liberated them and brought them to Haiti. But also the Haitian government provided capital, the resources for the travel and, of course, housing of African Americans to leave America and come to Haiti, right? And one of the individuals that came was, of course, Bishop James T. Holly, who was a prominent Pan-Africanist, and they settled in Port-au-Prince, right? And so I even have a copy of a letter that Bishop James T. Holly's daughter wrote to W.E.B. Du Bois, who was, of course, in New York City at the time. So just an extreme misrepresentation of history. I remember Brandon saying Dana was Judge Joe Brown's daughter. How true was that? When you say Brandon, I presume you're speaking Brandon of Pan-Africanism Strikes Back. Don't know, don't care. That's immaterial to the conversation.
And the American economy will not suffer if TPS and illegals are sent back home. You can't find data to show otherwise.
I think the policy's wrong. The policy is wrong.
Well, I think there's a couple. One, she's not telling the truth there. I just read an article this morning in the New York Times that stated that, particularly in Springfield, Haitians make up a large amount of pink-collar workers in the medical industry, particularly in terms of elderly care services. So, if that was to take place, it would have an adverse effect on the economy and the ability to provide care for those who are in hospice, elderly care. Right. So the claim she's making, once again, is false. But once again, a lot of this is just empty rhetoric, right? She's not backing this up with any data, scholarship, newspaper articles, at least from a reputable paper of any status or stature. But we tend to find this with FBA. There's not only a simplifying of history, but also a misrepresentation of the history and politics as well.
What I'm seeing specifically in Springfield and in Ohio, you talked about a number of Haitians who have come in. You're seeing in Springfield a city that is coming back. It's been coming back for the last few years. And frankly, one of the reasons it's come back is because of the Haitians who have been there to fill jobs that were simply not being filled at all. And that's what the employers will tell you. That's what the mayor issued another statement yesterday, and he's consistently said that these Haitians are buying homes, they're opening businesses, they're working, and they're trying to, some of them raise their family there. They're contributing to the community. That's what the mayor of Springfield is saying. And my observation is he's absolutely right. So when all these individuals who are there with TPS, now not all the Haitians, some of them have other legal status, but a significant number of them are under the TPS, which of course means with this ruling, of course, now. And I don't argue with the Supreme Court's decision. They were interpreting a statute that was written by Congress, which basically says that the courts cannot interfere with that decision, that designation, such as the administration made. My point is about policy, and I've consistently said this. This is bad for Ohio. This is a job killer for Ohio. It's a job killer for Springfield. It's not good for our state.
Can I put to you, Governor, what we've heard from the administration on this, which is something we heard Stephen Miller of the White House say yesterday when asked about whether or not it is safe for Haitians to go back to Haiti. Here's what he said.
The fact there might be pockets of Haiti with higher rates. Guess what? There's pockets of Chicago with crime rates just as high, right? There's pockets of cities like St. Louis with crime just as high. Pockets of Los Angeles with crime just as high. It's never been the case that having communities that have high crime rates is a basis for asylum. Never has been, it never will be.
The governor of the White House says it's safe for Haitians to go back, and they also say this was meant to be a temporary status. It's in the name, and it's been, in some cases, extended for years and years. What's your response to what they're saying?
Well, to say it's safe to go to Haiti is absurd, and to say compare it to Chicago, I think it doesn't make any sense at all. Look, I have a lot of contacts in Haiti. We work with people in Haiti. We have a school down there.
So, I'm not familiar with any Haitians that were in Ohio in large number. I would just say I was not in proximity or community with Haitians in the 80s and 90s who were in Ohio, right? But if I can make some contacts, um, I'm willing to do that. Here, man, listen, they made a deal with the U.S. government and the Democratic Party. Black Americans are not to blame. Seems like everyone want to blame. But so I'm not following. He says, original Skywalker. Who are you referring to when you says they made a deal? And where in this platform, or even the individuals who, of course, we're showing, has anyone blamed African Americans for this issue? So definitely, if you can tap in. Matter of fact, let me put the link in the chat. Definitely want to hear from you. As you know, a diversity of thought is welcome here. Doesn't matter if you're on the left, right, of course, right down the middle. You can tap in and be part of the conversation. Second issue is no racial epithets are allowed. No epithets of any kind are allowed. This is a space of Black empowerment. We believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-discipline, and of course, self-determination, self-defense, and self-determination. And of course, no false claims can be made. So you can have an opinion, but you can't make a claim that, of course, is averse to facts. So tap in, be part of the conversation. Definitely want to hear from you, original Skywalker. Definitely want to really unpack, what are you saying here? You says, man, listen, they made a deal with the U.S. government and the Democratic Party. Who is they? Who are you referring to? Black Americans are not to blame. Seems like everyone want to blame Black Americans. Just very quickly, we use the term African American here. Of course, we know African Americans are the only ethnic or racial group in this country that are identified by a color and not, of course, a geographic place of origin. But yeah, definitely want to unpack what you mean there. Agree. My cousin told me stories of him in New York City as a Haitian immigrant, crazy situations, overstood. So definitely, tap in, be part of the conversation. Links in the description. The link is in the chat, and we're going to go back here.
My wife and I do, and we travel there 20, 25 times, and we have a lot of contact there. It is worse today in Haiti than it's ever been. It never was very good. And frankly, it was good is when the U.S. Marines were down there. They did a absolutely phenomenal job. But the situation.
Well, that, of course, is ahistorical. What they didn't do a phenomenal job. They engaged in a level of colonialism. They pacified the community. They were actually going around deleting people. They were dropping bombs on Haitian villages. Over 15,000 people were deleted. Thousands more were maimed, right? And of course, they even undermined and, of course, re-engineered the economy to be dependent, of course, on the largesse of American multinational corporations. So that claim, of course, is adverse to facts. And this is someone who's supposed to be in support of course, so-called in support of Haitian people and the Haitian nation state. So that, of course, is a claim that is adverse to facts. So, but you know the history, you can watch, of course, the news, and you will know that the claims they're making, of course, is false. This is why we have to, be intellectually curious and do the work ourselves.
It's just absolutely terrible. People are killed every single day. The gangs basically run a good part of the country. And we're talking now in Port-au-Prince. We're talking about the capital. You cannot fly into Port-au-Prince with a U.S. carrier because the U.S. carrier will not go into Port-au-Prince. Why? Because the
And very quickly, we talk about the gangs. Dr. Pierre, of course, she's a professor at the University of British Columbia. She has written a number of articles on this subject matter. One of the things that she's discussed, and of course, she wrote an article, and I'm going to bring it up, family, called Haiti as Empire's Laboratory. And I'm going to bring this up. Matter of fact, I'm going to stop my share here, and we're going to just do a very quick dive into her article, because once again, we got to have these conversations with factual information. So as you can see here, Haiti is Empire's laboratory as the United States and its allies push renewed foreign intervention. The uses and abuses of the First Black Republic as testing ground of imperialism offer stark warnings. Haiti still struggles to be free. This is from Jemima Pierre. She is a professor, of course, who focuses on Haitian politics and history, the University of British Columbia. One of the things that she talks about is that these aren't actual gangs. Of course, the U.S. government and media is purporting that these are gangs, when in reality situation, these are paramilitary organizations, right, being funded, of course, by, of course, the West, typically the United States, that provide them with weapons, provide them with training, provide them with arms, so that they can, of course, engage in civil unrest. And one of the things that we're finding is that oftentimes these gangs are engaging in this type of behavior in communities, in areas where U.S. multinational corporations want to set up factories. This is not hyperbole. You can check this out. Of course, Haiti as Empire's laboratory, right? So once again, this is factual information about what's actually going on the ground, but you're not getting this in the mainstream media. So something to once again consider. He basically sanitized U.S. military intervention in Haiti. Absolutely, they always sanitize it, right? Always. So once again, Haiti is Empire's laboratory. Dr. Jemima Pierre, professor at the University of British Columbia. Please read her article. We aren't the Supreme Court. What does FBA have to do with this? That's a great point. Great point. Yeah, we have nothing to do with the Supreme Court, right? So, but the issue is the argument that the sister on her channel was making about, of course, from an FBA vantage point. So that's the point that we're making here. The book that put me on my history was Avengers of the New World. Absolutely. Yes, Laurent Du Bois is a dense but layered read. Most don't have a baseline for history. This is one of the best places to start. Yes, I started. Absolutely. I would agree as well. The Adventures of the New World. Absolutely. You're 100% correct. So once again, Money Green, you can tap in. The link's in the description. The link is in the chat. You can tap in. Of course, we can have a conversation. But the reason why we're talking about is what FBAs are getting wrong about this, right? They're disseminating and promoting misrepresentation of the history of Haitian people. And of course, a lot of arguments they're making, of course, are derivatives or vestiges of course, white nationalist rhetoric here in America. And of course, they're really making a push, an aggressive push or a militant push to engage in the form of integrationism. So if you take umbrage with my position, of course, you could tap in and be part of the conversation. Are you going to finish the rest of Dana's video? She gets worse. Yes, I am.
Gangs shoot the planes when they can. No, it's a horrible, horrible situation. So nobody who knows anything about Haiti can say that the situation is improved. In fact, it's gotten a lot worse. Good evidence of that is, Haitians who I have talked to who knew that they would have to leave or thought they might have to leave. There wasn't anybody I've talked to that said they were going back to Haiti. They're going to try to find any place else to go to where they can work and support their family, but they're not going back there.
He argues that Haitian migrants are filling jobs that simply were not being filled by anyone else. Employers were able to add second shifts, take on bigger projects, and grow their businesses, create a multi-tier effect that benefits the broader Ohio economy and other workers too. He's also saying that Haiti is unsafe. And he flat out calls it absurd to say it's safe for Haitians to return home. He has personal knowledge of Haiti, having traveled there 20 to 25 times, and states the situation is worse than it has ever been, with gangs controlling large parts of the country, including the capital, to the point where U.S. carriers won't fly in Port-au-Prince. And I'm going to say this, the United States of America, our government, did play a part in the recent years and decades of the deterioration of Haiti, even though the Haitian government has been corrupt for centuries. You guys have not got it together. But the Haitian people, instead of you people staying there fighting and revolting again and making sure that you have true independence, you decide to flee. And you prefer to come to America because it's more prosperous here.
So here's the issue, and this is a misrepresentation once again. One, this is coming from someone who has never lived in a country, a developing nation, where these things are taking place, right? What tends to happen is individuals have to leave because it's so dangerous for their families. It's not a situation of you could just up and say, you know what, we're going to fight. One of the foundational talking points of foundational Black Americans, the FBAs, is that we stand and fight, right? We don't flee to another country. We fight our enemies in the country that we're in. This is ahistorical. Ever since Paul Kofi's, travels back to Africa, right? Every subsequent generation of African Americans have sought in large number and in significant numbers to what? Repatriate to Africa or leave the country altogether. So this once again is false. The second issue is that you have to understand that when you do have administrations who seek to what? Foment civil services to actually develop the nation, they're undermined by the U.S. government, right? The greatest example of that, not only in the early 90s, but also even 2004, is what? The removal of Aristide. One, the U.S. government paid the general $1 million, right? To have him, to foment a coup to have Aristide leave. And then in 2004, because he wasn't pro-American imperialism and multinational corporations, he was arrested by the Marines, put on a plane, and then flown to the Central African Republic. It's easy for Dana to say that when she's never lived in a third nation. Yes, if the U.S. became a third world nation, trust me, they would flee. Absolutely. So it's almost the same as when people say, oh, man, you just rise up against the oppressive government. Well, if you lived in a country like that, you would know it's not as easy as you think. Unfortunately, Haitian immigrants, like many other immigrants, side with our national-born enemies or FBA, which is unacceptable. Well, you're making a claim that I would argue is versus the facts because when I've been in a community with Haitians, right? Haitians are some of the most militant, black-minded people you would meet. This is why they have this is why the world hates them, because they are self-liberated Africans. The second issue that you're claiming is you can't provide any evidence to substantiate the claim that you're making. This is a reality. As I stated before, the Haitian government for nearly a century provided free transportation and housing for African Americans who were seeking to leave the United States and settle in Haiti. So once again, Money Green, you could tap in, be part of the conversation, but I can disabuse you of the claims you're making because I have the facts on my side. This isn't rhetoric, right? The claims you're making, of course, are adverse to facts, and you can't provide why call us lazy and criminals. Who are you referring to? The stereotype, first and foremost, the stereotype of Black people being lazy and criminals isn't something that is germane only to African Americans. We're called this by the world. These are white supremacist, anti-Black caricatures of Black behavior that are prominent throughout the world, not just for African Americans, not just for Haitians, not just for continental Africans or West Indians. Globally, we are seen as lazy and prone to criminality. Immigrants do not side anyone but their own groups through language and customs. Right. Typically, yeah, they tend to be extremely ethnocentric. They kind of stick to themselves, right? Really don't branch out into the community. But those that do, because the gym I used to go to when I lived in Columbus, there was a very large Haitian community at the gym, and they were, of course, in solidarity. Oftentimes they would say, listen, what you're hearing in the media isn't accurate. These things are taking place because we're Black in our history. And I'm like, oh, I know. And they're like, that's what you're Pan-Africans, you know what's up. So once again, Money Green, you could tap in and be part of the conversation. But the claims you're making, of course, are adverse to facts. Now, could you find a one-off where there's one individual who is going to make a claim? Absolutely. We have that even in our own community where we have individuals. Like I said, you can have a one-off where there's going to be an individual who, unfortunately, has anti-Black views of Black people. We have that in our own community. Candace Owens is an example. Larry Elder is an example. Officer Tatum is an example. The twins, right, who had that platform. You always are going to find Black people who, unfortunately, throughout the world, have negative views of Black people in their own culture and community and in other cultures and communities, right? So this is a reality. Is that representative of all Haitians? No, it's not. Right? Because I'm quite sure you've had African Americans tell you that you were a criminal and dirty and lazy. Let's be honest here. You've had far more Black Americans, African Americans say this about you than Haitians. Let's just be honest. You're 53 years old. The children amalgamate, and in Miami and New York City on the coastline, the Haitians who came in the 80s were ruthlessly attacked by FBAs from what Haitians have said. Money Green is giving revisionist history, right? But the issue is every claim that you're making, we've experienced this 10 times over from African Americans, from individuals in our own community, not from Haitians. No, only cosplay. So once again, as I stated before, you may not have been here. I don't allow epithets of any kind on my platform, racial or otherwise. If it happens again, I'm going to boot you from the show and you're going to be blocked. Matter of fact, we're going to just get you out of here anyway. We don't play that over here. There's a difference of fighting with the colonizer oppressor inside his own house and fighting him in your own. She gets worse. Okay, let me get back to it.
Now, I want to swing back to Megyn Kelly's rant here, point out some pros and cons. The pros are, she tapped into some real frustration. Many Americans in affected communities have voiced similar concerns for years, raising a legitimate policy debate. Temporary protected status was legally designed as temporarily. The premise question is valid. SCOTUS, tiny, gives it credibility. The ruling gives her argument legal and institutional backing. And the emotional behind it, her passion, reads as a genuine advocacy for constituents, not just for political theater. But Megyn Kelly has been very vocal against the Trump administration. But here goes the cons of her rant. inflammatory language. Go back to F in Haiti. That kind of alienates moderates, and undermines the policy argument because you don't want to come off as if you're being a bigot or a racist or insensitive, but you do want to get your point across. So a broad generalization painting that all of the temporary protected status Haitians with the same brush ignores law-abiding, contributing members of those communities. Yes, there are a lot of Haitians and a lot of immigrants that work their ass off. Immigrants, I will give them this. They have an advantage of having that immigrant hustle in them. Now, the cats and dogs reference. Repeating a debunked and unverified claim does damage her credibility. And she really doesn't offer any solution. So the rant is this all outrage, no policy. She doesn't propose a structural repatriation or reform plan, but she does highlight that this TPS policy has been abused because there is no exit plan. But Megyn, with all your education and knowledge and background, why didn't you throw some recommendations in your rant? Bottom line is, Megyn Kelly's core policy argument has merit in the context that the Supreme Court ruling, but the delivery hands critics such as Roland Martin and others an easy way to dismiss the substance entirely. So as a black woman, a foundational black woman, I'm going to side with Megyn Kelly here because the buck has to stop at some point. We have over 20, 30 million illegals in this country in the last 4 years. Prior to that, you had 1 million of temporary protected status.
So now she's conflating illegal immigrants with individuals who are here legally and law-abiding. So once again, it's almost comical, right? The leaning in of, really white nationalist talking points and viewpoints, right? Because we know from a white nationalist or white supremacist frame of reference, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. We're all the same Negro, right? This is nothing more than simply, what's the term that we typically use when we talk about politically? So it's all the same Negro. This is really nothing more than, well, let me see here. You say she sounds like a U.S. foreign policy imperialism apologist. Yes. The plan is citizenship. They have to apply every year to maintain TPS until they could go for citizenship. That is very true. And so she's really just, an apologist for American imperialism. This is true, but just really leaning into the talking points, right? And like I say, this is really a goal of trying to just, once again, militant Americanism. Here, we're just like you. We're in this together. When the reality of the situation is, when we talk about from a frame of reference of racism, white supremacy, white hegemony, we're all the same Negro. And the only time they differentiate is when they're simply seeking to play us against each other, like pawns on the chessboard. But we know it's simply divide and conquer.
Had no intentions of ever leaving. So the pipes are burst. And American people, we are the ones paying for this mess. So where's the relief?
So, but here's the issue. She says American people are the ones paying for this mess, but the American government is the one that caused the problem in Haiti, that caused individuals to have to flee for their safety and come to America. So once again, the animus or the angst is not against the proper entity. If you have a true issue, a real issue with Haitian immigrants being in Ohio, then you, and I mentioned this when I went to the Haitian immigrants Ohio Haitians speak out event 2 years ago, when I said, and I told some of the white individuals there, if you really have an issue with them being here, then you need to take this up with the government, the federal government, because they're the ones that are causing the problems in Haiti that require individuals to leave and seek housing and stability in other countries. But they don't want to hear that conversation because the federal government isn't a soft target. But you get your rocks off trying to bully people who are just as oppressed and economically downtrodden as you.
The repair for America. You talk about the Haitians, they come to work on time, they work hard. Well, we need to start investing in Americans. More drug rehabilitation. Because Americans, yes, they can't pass drug tests, but you allow an influx of drugs coming into this country by way of an open border. Trump administration truly wants to invest in America first. And that means investing in Americans, not illegals and not temporary protection status holders. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Anna with the Data. Please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you. Bye.
Okay. So, family, we're going to open it up. Once again, the link is in the description. I'm putting the link in the chat once again. I mean, it's wild that she would make the argument that Trump wants to invest in Americans when, of course, Trump has provided resources for white South Africans to come to America. Trump is about investing in white people. Right, that's what Trump is about. He's not about investing in Americans. But this is the rhetoric that we find, unfortunately, FBA is using, in which they're, of course, siding with, of course, white nationalists, and really against their own self-interest. Right, thank God it was only 20 minutes, agreed. really unfortunate. But the reality of the situation is, it just really shows how politically immature people really are. One of the arguments that we find FBAs are making is that, well, if there aren't any immigrants here, there'll be more jobs, right? Well, black African Americans, we face the highest rate of employment discrimination. We know that the American government has been using immigrant labor to help develop this country since the Bracero program was created during World War II, where they would have immigrants come and work, of course, and engage in agricultural work, really backbreaking agricultural work, right? We know that the Trump administration, the Washington Post, wrote an article for expose stating that, showing and even interviewing immigrant workers who have been working for Trump since the early 90s. So this rhetoric that they're trying to help Americans, is it true? Right? The goal is that they believe that this is an issue for white people. They have an issue with the coloring of America, and they want to, as much as possible, return to what? A pre-civil rights America. Trump even stated that civil rights was bad, of course, for white people. Trump has even, I read an article this morning on the New York Times about Trump provided gift bags to South Africans who immigrated, right? They had, of course, tablets, American flags, and even documentation that provided a revisionist history of South African history, in which they argued that whites were the victims of racial persecution, right? So the goal of the Trump administration, and really of American government in period, is not to benefit American citizens, right? This is not the case whatsoever. But the revisionist history, the truncating of complex issues, simplifying issues that Haitians are facing, but not actually getting to the crux of the problem, is something that we tend to find on a regular basis amongst individuals who promote these talking points. And one of the things that's extremely wild, because FBAs are really a personality call trip that get their information from Tariq Nasheed, is at one point they were promoting the concept of B1, Black First, right? And we're all the same Negro under the system of racism, white supremacy. And then, of course, this is just another grift, right? To lean into, of course, being conservative. Dems give out handouts. Dems give out handouts also. Conservatives give handouts as well, right? One of the benefits, and I'm glad you brought that up, so I'm going to speak to that talking point. When I was an undergraduate at Wright State University, I double majored in Black Studies, Africana Studies, African American Studies, and Sociology. For my sociology major, I took a class on social inequality. We had to read a book titled American Society, How It Really Works. And what we found is that, and what you're really speaking to was social welfare programs. What we found was that over 60% of all of the social welfare that's provided by the United States government goes to actual corporations, not American citizens. Right, to actual corporations, not American citizens. Matter of fact, Dr. King, in the last 2 years of his life, provided a great soliloquy where he talked about how Black people are always taught to pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, to do for ourselves, don't look for handouts. But then he highlighted all of these governmental policies that provided subsidies. Well, we could call it welfare, we could call it relief, to, of course, white people, to give them an economic leg up in this society. Right? There's a great book that highlights that, titled When Affirmative Action Was White. We could talk about the GI Bill and how Black GIs did not receive federal benefits from the government. In fact, in the book, it talks about only 1 in 7 Black servicemen received their federal benefits. Part of this was because the way of the bill was written was racist in nature, in which they made sure that the benefits not be disseminated at the federal level, but at the local level. And those local offices will be ran by, of course, white people who, just by consequence, were white supremacists. You see what I'm saying here? So we have to do a deeper dive into the history to know what's really going on. That is a surface level political talking point. The government, matter of fact, Democrats and Republicans are on the same team, right? Once again, you read the book, American Society, How It Really Works. I even wrote an article about this on Medium. Both political parties are funded by the same special interest groups. Both political parties are anti-progressive. Both political parties are not for the working class. This is a reality. The data shows, this is just a reality of what's going on here. They're funded by the same special interest groups. Where you see them debating, this is nothing more than wrestling. This is Monday night, WWE Monday Night Raw. In fact, the Boondocks did a great parody of this where they had the character of Ann Coulter on the show and Reverend Rilo Goodlove, right? Rilo Goodlove, and they was on there debating, and then they get off screen, and they're like, man, he's like, yeah, still trying to get this money, and Ann Coulter's in a relationship with a black dude that's wearing a kufi, right? So this is nothing more than, of course, entertainment. Dana, let's see here, Dana only used handpicked talking points from Roland Martin to attempt to debunk the epitome of a straw man argument. Yes. What handout does FBA accuse immigrants of getting that are not available to others in the U.S.? This is very true. I did a show last November where Dennis Sperling, and of course Crimson Cure, they did a show where he's talking about what FBAs are getting resources that are supposed to be allocated to African Americans. But then he never stated what those resources were. Right, because this is just not true whatsoever. Very true. I haven't read a book. I didn't have to read a book. I spoke with my grandfather who was in World War II. Very good, very good. So these are the issues here. Right, they're making claims that are worse than facts, but then when you really press them and say, "Can you provide an example?" They can't do it. Right? See here, they say they take business loans from them and never gets explained how or if they even apply for one themselves. Very true. Very true. I can say this much. I know when I was in my African Studies program in graduate school, I was able to get student loans. Immigrant students weren't able to get student loans. You couldn't get a student loan unless you were an American citizen. And so they received extremely small stipends from the school that, to be quite honest with you, was not enough to live off of. I'm like, man, like they had to hustle and everything, right? And the second issue is most immigrants are doing jobs that we don't want to do. Right, I'm just gonna be honest. I don't want to work in agriculture. I don't want to work in manufacturing, right? And we find that each typically second generation American. So if you come here, you're going to do pound scrape, do whatever you got to do. Second generation, there's a sense of entitlement. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So this is just really promoting white nationalist rhetoric. As we said it before, she provided a extremely simplistic, truncated, but also revisionist view of Haitian history, the state that they gave the country back to. Of course, France, that's just not what transpired. Of course, it's a complete misrepresentation of history. And that's done purposely, right? To make themselves seem like they have some type of insight that others don't, when in fact they're simply misrepresenting the facts. So once again, family, you all can tap in and be part of the convo, or we're going to actually call it an afternoon, but definitely want to hear from you all. Definitely want to once again give a shout out to Mr. K for, of course, sending me the email this morning about this show, about, of course, his sister and what took place and transpired. Once again, family, you're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, and of course, donate. Let's see here, Kevin. My mom immigrated to the UK back in 1971. Before she became a nurse, she had to do all kinds of blue-collar jobs to make ends meet. Yeah, this is typically what happens. What about our scholarships for Black Americans given to melanated immigrants? Well, could you provide an example of that? Right? Could you provide an example of there being scholarships that are set up for African Americans that are giving to people of color who are specifically immigrants? Please make me aware of any of those claims. Could you substantiate that claim? I'll be willing to wait and hear. Right, because if that is taking place, and that is an issue that needs to be addressed with the administration of whoever is responsible for disseminating those scholarships. That's not a situation where you attack the individuals who are receiving. Right, you would need to go to the individuals who are who created that scholarship or disseminating that scholarship. For example, when I was, of course, the director of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center at Sacramento State University, there were a number of scholarships that we set up with the alumni. Black alumni. Those scholarships only went to Black students, right? You could apply, and one of the criteria is you have to be African, you have to be of African descent, right? So you would need to talk to the individuals who are responsible for dispersing those scholarships if they aren't going to African Americans when they're were allowed to do so. You have to talk to the person who's in charge. So during my tenure as a director, all of those scholarships went to students who were actually eligible based on their identity, right? But if I would have gave scholarships to Filipino students, then you can't attacking Filipino students isn't going to do any good. You need to come to me and say, hey, why are you giving Black scholarships to Filipino students? A great example that we do know this took place, but that was in terms of immigrants, was with Black Lives Matter, the organization, not the movement, but the organization, where they raised money to allegedly fight against police genocide, as we call it. But what did they do? They was giving money to LGBTQ and trans organizations. So that would be an example of money that was supposed to benefit the Black community, but the individuals in charge, who were Black queer women, gave that money to LGBTQ and trans organizations. So what that is actually is that's actual crime. It's called conversion, criminal conversion, where you solicit funds for one purpose and then use it for something else. That is a crime. But once again, I'm waiting to see if you can tell us which scholarships and where and when this took place. Most Black immigrants don't even go to HBCUs. So which scholarships are you talking about? There's another issue here. We don't use the term melanated. All human beings have melanin. Some just simply more than others. We just say people of color or immigrants of color, right? Or if you want to reference West Indian immigrants, yeah. So, but yeah, this is something to consider, right? But once again, if you could provide an example, I'm more than willing to hear an example of scholarships, and I presume you're referring to college scholarships that were allotted for African Americans, designated for African Americans, that went to non-African Americans. Right? I would love to hear you provide that information. The second issue is, if that is taking place, then your angst needs to be with the individuals who are disseminating those funds. Right? Not the people receiving them, the individuals who are responsible for giving them out. You need to go to the leadership. And that's the way you solve the problem. If you have a child that's a problem at the school, you don't talk to the teacher. You go to the principal. The principal don't handle her BI. You go to the superintendent. The superintendent doesn't handle their BI. You go to the school board. You go to the person in charge. Right? Not the person, not the small person on the totem pole. You go to the person in charge and address the issue. Address the issue. And address the issue. I can't talk today for some reason. I always say, don't blame the people who take opportunities at your expense. You blame the person who created those opportunities. For people who take those opportunities at your expense. Hence, treat the cause, not the symptoms. Absolutely. You treat the cause, not the symptoms. And so I'm waiting for an example, once again, because this is really another FBA talking point. Dennis Sperling, who's an attorney, Crimson Cure, who made an argument that immigrants were receiving benefits from the government that were designated for African Americans. And out of his entire soliloquy, he never provided one example of a benefit that they were receiving that we were supposed to get. And I'm an African American, right? I've never in my life received benefits from this country simply because I was an African American. That was designated for me as an African American ever in my life. So my interest is, hey, if this is what's going on, please let me know, because I'm missing out on some resources. But they don't provide an example because the claim is adverse to facts, right? So they're engaging in what I would argue is a form of pseudo-political commentaries, pseudo-political subterfuge, right? So, but once again, family, tap in, links in the description, links in the chat. You're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black in conjunction, of course, with Beat Line Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Just very quickly, family, definitely hope you all can donate. Not begging out here, but one of the issues I found with my channel is, and I've been talking to Dr. C.S.I. Johnson about this, is that throttling down my channel, right? There have been times where I've gone live, where I have my Black History Facts set up to be scheduled, and there are no notifications coming in, right? And so he argued, yeah, that throttling down your content, and it's probably because of the nature of your content. So definitely want you all to support as much as possible so that we could continue to bring in revenue, so we could give you this radical revolutionary Black thought right here in these YouTube streets. So once again, sister, we'll go back up, make sure I get your name right. Let's see here. I want to make sure we get your name right. Jada 70s, still waiting. I hope that you can provide an example, right, of scholarships that are designated, earmarked, of course, for African Americans, that were given to immigrants of color. So still waiting for you to provide some information to substantiate that claim. There was one situation I could think of where there was an Indian man who posed as an African American to get into medical school. So he cut his hair, kind of sit out in the sun a little bit, get a tan, and he did that to pose to get into medical school. But once again, this was someone who was Indian, not someone who was African or West Indian. So, but once again, that was an issue. He was engaged in, of course, subterfuge, deception, artifice, and then, of course, the issue would go to, of course, the board that, of course, disseminated those funds or resources to him. Right? Why didn't you all do a deeper dive? Right? We don't want to stereotype individuals, but typically you would ask the question, "Are you an African American?" Right? So something to consider. But yeah, definitely want to hear from you all. So definitely, sister, if you can, once again, if you can, provide an example to substantiate the claim that you've made, it'd be greatly appreciated. Family, so any last thoughts before we wrap up today's show? What Megyn Kelly and FBAs get wrong about Haitian temporary protected status? As many of you are aware, unless you're a recluse or living under a rock, the Supreme Court has ended temporary protected status. But as we know, this was something that was being pushed by the Trump administration. There were the vote with the Supreme Court was 6-3. 6 won in the majority, 4 ending TPS, and 3 were in the minority against it. Of course, I think one of the Supreme Court justices that were in the minority stated that this is racially based, right? So something to, of course, consider there was that they believe that, of course, it was racially based. They provided some examples. I'm not going to read their opinion because it'll take far too long, and it is pretty dense. But they said that they know that it was racially based, and everything Trump has been doing has been racially based. He's been very clear about that. Why someone would think that there would be a benefit to African Americans? These people don't care about us, never have, and they never will. What's most important is that we care about ourselves and we do for ourselves, and in whatever way we can. That is part of that is what making sure that we are electing politicians from our community that actually represent our interests and do not sell us out. Right? One example would be Kamala Harris. Another example would be the congressman from Brooklyn, Hassan Jeffries. Right, Jeffries, I know is his last name. Of course, the Dr. Jemima Pierre wrote an article about how they've played a role in, of course, undermining Haitian sovereignty. Right, what they call menstrual diplomacy. Right, so definitely make sure you check that out as well. But of course, you've watched LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. And of course, Beacon Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African Center News and Information. And once again, it's probably been about 5-10 minutes. I asked for that information to substantiate the claim that she's made, and she's unable to do so. Right, and so this is something that we tend to find is very common with individuals who, of course, identify as FBA. They make spurious claims regarding African or West Indian immigrants. Part of that's because they operate in the echo chamber, and it gives them a sense of superiority to talk down about group non-African American groups of Black people. Dr. Dennis Asar Winkler, peace and power to you, brother. Happy Pan-African Monday. Some of these accounts are bots. That's why. Okay, very good. Okay, but then they're never able to actually substantiate the claims that they make. Right. When I had my live with Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, of course, we were talking about anti-Black misandry, but part of the conversation dovetailed into, of course, Pan-Africanism. Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Dennis definitely tap in. And what ended up taking place was the sister was like, well, Pan-Africanism needs to first work in Africa, yada, yada, yada. And I said, well, hold on, sister. I said, Pan-Africanism is about working to better the political, social, and economic position and status of African people, irrespective of where you are in the world. Right? Of course, she gets quiet. I don't get a response. So, like I said, some of their understanding of this history and politics and Pan-Africanism, I'm just baffled that one would come on a platform, seek to engage in conversations about things they really know nothing about. It's peculiar to me, but of course, as the sister said, you're asking for an example. What I was saying is, are Black immigrants not trying to get Blacks? No, we're not going to play that game. You made a claim. Your claim was that there are scholarships that are designated or earmarked for African Americans, okay, that immigrants of color receive. This is the claim you made. You didn't ask a question. You made a statement, a fact. And I'm asking for you to provide an example of that, right? Right. Now, when you ask a question on Black immigrants trying to get Black scholarships, I would, yeah, of course. But once again, the Black scholarship, it doesn't say you have to be an African American. It says you have to be Black or African descent. I know this because I've been on committees where we decide who receives scholarships based on the applicants. And the committees I were on, because I've worked in higher education for over a decade. I am a doctor, Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba. I'm a real doctor, not Cheyenne Bryant. It doesn't say you have to be an African American. It says you must be Black or of African descent. That's what it says. I know, because I've gone through the process. I've received scholarships as well. This is why when you talk about Black culture centers, what was the ideological impetus of Black culture centers, the creation of Black culture centers in higher education, which started at San Francisco State University? It was Pan-Africanism, Pan-African nationalism, Black radicalism. I know this because my dissertation is on Black culture centers, so I know the history. Every book that's been written by Black culture centers, I've read and working on one right now. So you don't know what the French toast you're talking about. This is my lane. This is what I do. I handle my BI. This is my wheelhouse. You're speculating because you hate other Black people because you don't want to clap back against the people who are actually causing a social, political, and economic quagmire. It's called political, social cowardice. And I'm saying this on my platform, you're nothing more than a coward. Now get the fuck off my line. Absolutely ridiculous. Ain't playing that shit. So Dr. Dennis, you could tap in, Brother Congo in the UK. And you know we're going to have a special show coming up July 2nd to honor, of course, the life, legacy, and of course the work of Patrice Emery Lumumba, my namesake. So definitely want to make sure we do that. But yeah, I banned Jay the 70s off the platform. I don't got time for that dumb shit. I'm sorry, family. I'm sorry. But I just don't have time for it. I don't have time for it, right? It's speculation, the misrepresentation of facts, making a claim that you can't substantiate it, so you want to come back and ask a question. We don't have time for that nonsense. We don't have time for that nonsense. As I stated, you could come on a platform, we can have a respectful conversation, but I don't allow people to come on a platform and make claims that are adverse to facts. It hurts my credibility. I think you all, of course, can understand that. So once again, tap in. The link's in the description. The link is in the chat. You're watching LumubaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe if you gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, right? And so, and here's the thing, like if you have an issue with funding for higher education, that's a conversation we can have. And we can talk about the rising costs in higher education, right? And how in many states, particularly California, it was free to go to college until what? Republican Ronald Wilson Reagan, what? Said since you all want to protest and engage in social disobedience, we're gonna up the price, right? So it's difficult for me to take people like that serious when they literally don't know what they're talking about. So once again, family, the link is in the description. The link is in the chat. You can tap in, be part of the conversation. But as the sister said, a lot of these individuals are simply bots, right? And that's not something I was aware of. You know, as you know, I'm still relatively green in these new YouTube streets, but I just don't have the stomach for that type of nonsense. So once again, family, tap in. Link is in the description. Link in the chat is in the chat. The crux of our conversation was about, of course, what Megyn Kelly and FBAs get wrong about Haitian temporary protected status. Of course, we address that issue from, of course, Supreme Court level to, of course, boots on the ground level here in, of course, Ohio. As I said, I'm going to be headed to Springfield this evening to see if I can connect with our brothers and sisters there and just get some of their views on how they feel about what's going on and what's the next step. And then, of course, last but not least, we just had to debunk some, of course, FBA talking points, right? But once again, family, the link is in the description. Link is in the chat. We'd love to hear from you all, your thoughts, regarding this issue before we close out. So I'm going to stay on live for about another 10 minutes, and then we will close out. So if you want to be part of the conversation, you're more than welcome to do so. Once again, happy Pan-African Monday. Put a one in the chat if you watched our boy Boots in his Take Care of His Business this past Saturday at the Barclays in Brooklyn. I've been to the Barclays in Brooklyn, actually. Nice building, but we know they gentrified to make that happen. But yeah, you know, as many of you know, I'm a huge boxing fan, boxing aficionado. So I definitely gave thanks for seeing our brother come out on top. But, you know, the crux of the situation is, I think if we're going to do a part 2 to this, is what can we do to help Haitian brothers and sisters who are here on temporary protected status? What can we do? If that is filing an injunction, I don't know if we can appeal the Supreme Court's ruling, or do we try to provide resources to them to be able to settle or immigrate somewhere else? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but I would love to create a forum to where that is something that can be addressed. Because as I said it before, they, of all people, and I've stated this ad nauseum, I've written about this on Medium, I believe Haitians are the greatest group of African people ever lived. What they were able to accomplish in creating the first Black Republic, they gave so much, insurmountable odds, and they achieved what was considered impossible: the creation of a independent, sovereign, and free Black nation state in the death, decadence, and dysphoria of the Western world. So in my opinion, we will always be indebted to them, right? And their victory showed us that through armed conflict, through armed struggle, we too could be a free, proud, and productive people and have our own nation state once again. So that's one of the reasons why those who held slavery dear sought to crush, of course, Haiti, and continue to seek to crush, of course, the descendants of those courageous, what we like to call Haitian Maroons, right? So the New World Avengers. So family, I definitely appreciate everyone tapping in, being part of the conversation. Make sure you like, subscribe, donate. I understood you're not in a position right now. Make sure you like, subscribe, donate. You are watching, of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Of course, in conjunction with Beacon Line Network, the Pan-African Social Media Extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. Until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Always, always, always bet on Black. Yes, I would. I would have no problem debating her anytime. If you could reach out to her, you know her, whatever, you want to set it up, please. You got my email. We can make it happen. So, matter of fact, if you want, you can email her, copy me on the email, and we could go from there. But I'll be more than willing to have a conversation with her. All right. Until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on Black. Peace.